you've been hearing a lot about the NATO response to what's happening in Ukraine, right? Should NATO intervene? Can NATO intervene? What would happen if NATO got involved? Because right now it's just let's send weapons to the Ukrainians and let them fend for themselves. I don't know why I have to spell this out, but I'm going to do it anyway. The reason NATO does not send troops, the reason you don't have US troops in Ukraine right now, or British troops for that matter, is because it would obviously lead to an escalation, right? This is Russia. It's a nuclear power. So it would very likely lead to a nuclear conflict if you have another nuclear power, such as, let's say, the UK or the US, getting involved directly. And so the other aspect has been, well, what about giving equipment? Because if we're not going to get involved, we meaning NATO in this case, how about just giving more than guns? Let's give jets to the Ukrainians, right? As some people are suggesting. And let's go further. Let's give the Ukrainians our airfields, right? So that's been tossed around. Well, let me tell you what Russia thinks, given that they're on one side of this issue. So Russia's warned of providing airfields for Ukraine's military aviation, right? The Russian Defense Ministry, they put out a statement, and the spokesperson said that Russia is aware of Ukrainian combat aviation trips to Romania and some other neighboring countries, okay? And they said that if any country provides airfields for Ukraine's military aviation with subsequent use against the Russian armed forces, quote, it may be regarded as the involvement of these states in an armed conflict, okay? And this comes after they destroyed the Vinnytsia airfield of the Ukrainian Air Force, right? And the Russian Defense Ministry is also saying that 3 or more Ukrainian Su-27 fighter jets, those are Russian-made, and 3 unmanned aerial vehicles, so those are drones, UAVs, they were shot down on Sunday. So 3 Ukrainian jets and 3 drones. And he's saying that in total, yesterday and incomplete today, the Ukrainian Air Force lost 11 combat aircraft and 2 helicopters. Almost all combat-ready aviation of the Kiev regime has been destroyed. It's funny to see someone using regime about a supposedly Western or Western allied country for once. You know, usually it's the other way around. In any case, he said that if other countries get involved, they will... I'm going to translate what he's saying. He's saying, if you give the Ukrainians airfields, we're just going to consider you cooperative, that you're a part of the same team. We're going to come and bomb you. And that would obviously potentially lead to a nuclear war. And that goes for Poland, right? Because obviously Poland is not a nuclear power, but it is a NATO country. And the Article 5, NATO's Article 5 states that if, one country gets pulled into a conflict, everyone else has to fall in line and support them. So you pull in Poland, and then obviously you pull in the UK and the US, which are nuclear powers. And, that's not a good idea, is it? Let's ask Secretary of State Blinken what he thinks about this.
None of its 30 members are willing to set up a no-fly zone. President Biden has been very clear he has no interest in that or combat troops. But what more can the United States do here? If, for instance, the Polish government, a NATO member, wants to send fighter jets, does that get a green light from the U.S., or are you afraid that will escalate tension?
No, that gets a green light. In fact, we're talking with our Polish friends right now about what we might be able to do to backfill their needs if, in fact, they choose to provide these fighter jets to the Ukrainians. What could we do? How can we help to make sure that they get something to backfill the planes that they're handing over to the Ukrainians? We're in very active discussions with them about that. Look, I've been in Europe for the last couple of days working closely, as always, with our allies and partners at NATO, the European Union, the G7 countries, and all of us together are continuing to take steps to increase the pressure on Russia through additional sanctions, all of which are very actively under discussion and will be implemented in the coming days, as well as taking further steps to give the Ukrainians what they need to defend themselves against the Russian aggression.
How do you...
He said it's a green light. So Blinken, because a no-fly zone is off the table, right? A no-fly zone means that if there were Russian jets in the air, they would be shot down. No flying, right? As the name aptly suggests. That obviously would lead to the same issue that we mentioned, a nuclear war, potential nuclear war. So the CBS anchor. She's asking him, well, what about Poland sending fighter jets, as we were just talking about? And he says it gets a green light. Well, what does Poland think? It's their jets and their airfields. Let's see what Poland thinks. So you had this outlet over here, Nexta, saying that Poland may provide Ukraine with MiG-29 fighters and Su-25 attack aircraft. These are Russian-made, the MiGs and Sus, and receive F-16 fighters in exchange from the U.S. The Wall Street reported, citing sources in the U.S. administration. Well, actually, take a look at what the chancellery of the Polish prime minister said. This is the official account on Twitter. They said, fake news! Unfortunately, you are spreading misinformation, with a quotation from 27th of February. Poland will not send its fighter jets to Ukraine, as well as allowed to use its airports. I think they mean they're not going to send fighter jets. So neither fighter jets nor airports, right? None of them. No airfields. And they say we significantly help in many other areas. So, I mean, the Polish, I don't know what Blinken is thinking, but the Polish are certainly, they seem to be certainly aware of the risks that this carries. I would assume that Blinken, being the Secretary of State of a nuclear power, would have maybe, a little bit more reasoning and critical thinking capabilities. But no, thankfully the Polish seem to appreciate the veracity of the danger and the risks at hand. Right? Again, one NATO country gets pulled in, all the others have to come along. It's a lovely deal. Now, that's a problem, of course, because it's very easy for the US to say, well, yeah, sure, let the Polish give them jets, but Russia's not going to see it that way. Again, I don't know if this is getting across, but I'm going to explain it again. If you are attacking the Russians from Polish airfields, so it's not even Polish pilots, okay, and it doesn't even have to be Polish jets. But if you're just using their infrastructure, their military infrastructure, the Russians are going to come after you, and God knows what could happen. This is the whole point of MAD, of mutually assured destruction. The entire Cold War, most of it is proxy wars, right? Afghanistan is an example. Africa, you had lots of things, Angola. You never had a direct confrontation between the US and Russia because everyone knew it would end the world. And this balance of power still exists today, I would argue, very much so. In a lot of ways, the world is actually even more dangerous than it used to be. But I just want to make sure that you guys are getting the gravity of the situation. I'm getting this across, that even if the Polish don't give any jets and they don't use any Polish pilots, just by the Ukrainians just by virtue of using the Polish airfields, they would cause unimaginable problems. And I really don't understand how you can be so reckless, like Blinken or the Ukrainian president Zelensky. He just goes every day, he films a video and he just posts it online and he goes like, where's the no-fly zone? Like, do you not understand what the fuck a no-fly zone means? You would not exist. Like, Ukraine, nothing would exist anymore. We would all die. What is wrong with you? That's just not a solution. The solution is, don't fucking join NATO and put that in writing that you're not going to join NATO. And that's it. You don't have to start a nuclear holocaust or a war, a nuclear winter. You can just not join NATO. And, that's a diplomatic solution. I think that everyone would prefer. There was a no-fly zone in Libya. Do I need to tell you what happened to Libya? I think we've gone through that quite a few times, right? That country's destroyed. And Libya is just, if you think Libya was bad, wait till you see what the world will look like if they put a no-fly zone in Ukraine. You don't even want to know. I don't want to know. So I just I've shown you all sides here, and I don't think the Russian position in this case is out of place. If the United States was at war with, I don't know, let's say Mexico for some reason. Past grievances aside, let's say today that they are at war with Mexico, and then the Russians come and build a bunch of airstrips. Or just take the Cuban Missile Crisis, which is a real example, a recent example, where the Russians put Soviet missiles, the Soviets put their missiles in Cuba, right? And there was almost a nuclear war because of that. And thankfully, this disaster was averted and so on. But that was going to be the solution. You either get those missiles out of Cuba, or there's going to be a fucking nuclear winter. That's it. There's no other option. That's the off ramp. You need to de-escalate. Escalating is not the solution here. A no-fly zone is not going to fix anything. It's going to make things worse. NATO allies of Ukraine. Again, Ukraine's not in NATO, but it has allies in NATO. And so if they come in and start providing military infrastructure, that is going to be akin to a declaration of war for the Russians. Make no mistake. And the United States would view it the same way any other country would. And if I may just add one more thing. The Russians, right now, they're facing a Ukrainian military force. And at the same time, all of these NATO countries are already sending weapons. Honestly, let's say it was the other way around. Let's say it's the US in Russia's place. I think the Americans would view what NATO is doing now to support Ukraine as a declaration of war, right? Let's look at the war on terror just as an example. The Americans and NATO, they went to Afghanistan, they went to Iraq to kill Al-Qaeda, to get rid of all these terrorists, right? Well, for them, it wasn't just a question of killing the terrorists. It's like even if you are connected to them in any way, you're going to go as well. And to the point that most of the people killed are actually just their civilians. It's not even like there is no connection at all. So they killed so many people, that it's just indiscriminate at that point. But you remember the speech, I mean, which speech? There's so many of George Bush, but he's saying, you're either with us or against us. And, we're going to come after you. We're going to get you. And it's very clear, if you give financial support, military support, any sort of connection, you're going to get killed. And in this case, Europe, the United States are giving military support to the Ukrainians, not infrastructure like airfields, but they are giving them javelins, stingers. Stingers are anti-aircraft, javelins are anti-tank, and a plethora of other small arms. And the Russians, if they wanted, could definitely see that as them being participants in the conflict. I'm sure the Americans would. So, I'm just saying, I'm thankful things aren't getting uglier already, given that even the EU and even Germany, they've broken with their neutrality. They're supposedly their self-proclaimed neutrality, and they're sending weapons for the first time to a war zone, right? So it's serious. Don't underestimate it, Don't underestimate it. It could get a lot worse. And these idiots that are calling for a no-fly zone, they need to be locked up and throw the key away. I mean, figuratively speaking, right? They're just dangerous. They're morons. They're dangerous.